Welcome to the Fix Harare podcast, brought to you by Harare News. My name is Tawanda Mudzonga. I'm the editor of Harare News, and joining me is the managing editor, Henry Munangatire. Hi, Henry.
Hey, Tawanda, it's great to be back and to tackle issues around us in our city and that affect us.
Today, we're going to talk about the deplorable state of public transport in Harare. For years, the only option for most residents to get to and from work every day has been using kombis. In the past couple of years, government has reintroduced ZUPCO buses which are meant to be a systematic, regularized, and affordable way for residents to move from one place to the other. But kombis and Mushikashika, who operate using their own rules, often with dangerous driving, are still the only option for many. To help us look at the problems with public transport, we're talking to the Acting National Spokesperson of the Passenger Association of Zimbabwe, PAZ, Mr. Andrew Chibanda. Welcome to the show, Mr. Chibanda.
You are welcome.
Please, can you tell us about your organization, the Passenger Association of Zimbabwe? What do you do?
Our organization's main thrust is on passenger security and safety. Whenever they are using public transport, be it a kombi or a transit bus, we look at their safety at most, and we educate our clients on their safety and their rights whenever they use public transport. That's our main thrust.
Okay, so you advocate on the behalf of passengers to relevant authorities?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us what challenges are people facing accessing public transport in Harare?
There's a shortage of transport in Harare, in all suburbs. As you know, these days we have the provision of ZUPCO buses under the government mandate to provide cheap transport to the public, but that move is leaving people with a lot of challenges, especially when they are coming from the suburbs to town and back again. We find that ZUPCO is a little number of fleets to service all the areas well. In the morning, if you go around Harare, you see that people are scattered all over the roads looking for transport. People end up using lorries and any other means of transport that they may find. And on Mondays, there's a challenge. This fleet is so depleted, and in some suburbs, we don't have transport in the morning. We only start to have transport in the evening. And if you go around the pickup points dotted around Harare, if you go to Copacabana, Market Square, Resende bus stations, and 4th Street and charge office, you will find out that passengers are crowded most of the time, trying to wait for transport, sometimes with no surety that transport is coming. And whenever buses are available in the ranks, people or passengers scramble to have the first opportunity to embark on these buses. So ZUPCO is failing to provide enough transport to the public. We advocate for involvement of other private players in the transport sector to alleviate the transport shortages being faced by people. If you go around Charter Road around 3:30 in the evening up to 8 o'clock, people will be scattered all over trying to find transport to ferry them home. They end up blocking half of the road, leaving only minimal space for other transporters to have access of passage to wherever they want to go. These are some of the challenges and observations we have made so far.
Okay. I think there is definitely a problem with public transport in Zimbabwe, but the government has recently banned any other private players from operating and saying that ZUPCO is the only entity allowed to provide public transport. What do you think of that, and is that a viable solution?
Yes, the ban on other players in the transport sector, in the first instance, it was good through the establishment of statutory instrument 83 of 2020 in regard to COVID-19. As Passenger Association of Zimbabwe, we give our government a nod on that because these private players operate in a haphazard way. However, this again establishment or the coming up of the SI 3 of 2020 gave rise to monopoly by the government to only give ZUPCO the chance to be the public transporter. We think as Passengers Association of Zimbabwe, these private players should be given a chance, but they have to be more organized since ZUPCO is failing to cope up with the large numbers of the transiting people in our urban areas. However, the ban on other public transport players is good in that it has decongested our urban centers, and the way passengers were being held with these touts and drivers was not good. And we need to conscientize with those pirate players in the transport sector to give us their way of operation so that they can be more organized than what they used to be. If they fail to organize themselves, we see this challenge of transport continuing to have us or to be with us for a good number of years. So we are trying by all means to discuss with them on the way forward what is needed to be put on the ground so that they can be accepted back into operation.
Okay. Addressing that issue as well, what is called Mushikashika and kombis are renowned for dangerous driving and chaos. We have unlicensed drivers, unworthy vehicles, overloading of passengers, things like that. How do we balance the need for public transportation with order?
It's all the same. Even with these ZUPCO fleets we have on the roads, we have a lot of unroadworthy buses which are ferrying people. The same applies to Mushikashika again. We have unroadworthy vehicles ferrying people and passengers to and from work. So we need a strong statutory instrument, or the VID should work as it is mandated to do, not to monopolize or sideline other players in the transport sector, depending on who is on the forefront of the thing. Like the ZUPCO thing, there are people who are in front of it, so they have weight, while those involved in the Mushikashika and the kombis and the like have no muscle to stand for themselves. And we see them harassed all the time by the police and any other members of the security forces. And on the issue of reckless driving, yes, it's true, those kombi drivers and the Mushikashika drivers are so reckless that they put the lives of both the passengers on their vehicles and the pedestrians in danger everywhere. Even if they approach a red road, they just shoot through and they try to maneuver their way whenever they think they have to go. So we only need policies put in place, and these policies should have clauses which clearly states what form of punishment should be given to one if found breaking the rules or laws put in place to curb this kind of reckless driving which is being perpetrated by these kombi drivers.
Okay, yes, we definitely agree that combi drivers and Mushikashika, they are reckless and they drive very carelessly. But is that not true that this is also because of the business model under which they operate in terms of what money they earn and what they have to pay to the owner of the vehicle or to defray their costs?
Yes, sometimes they have to meet a target. And at the same time, they need to carry something home, which is not part of their targets. So that kind of work condition pushes them to act or to behave in the way they behave. But we are saying if they have a tangible framework which guides them on which areas and issues to look at. Of course, they need money, but they should have a framework to work on so that they can achieve their targets as well as keeping the public safe from their kind of behavior.
Okay. Mr. Chibanda, my last question to you today. What is PAZ doing to hold combi drivers, owners, and Mushikashika accountable to make them more responsible with their public transport vehicles on the roads?
We had been trying to organize meetings with them and trying to have a way forward on what they should do. Right now we have another organization which is trying to register as a mother body for those Mushikashikas and combi drivers. But the challenge is in Harare we have so many operators or individuals who own kombis. Every owner of a kombi has his own or her own way of operation. So coming together now is becoming so difficult. So far we had a court case which is yet to be finished about these combi drivers and Mushikashikas being given permission to operate under a mother board which is well known. Like now, if you go on the road, you can see ZUPCO, which is another organization trying to organize these combi operators into an institution where they have a protocol of operation. This is the same we are doing. We are working hand in glove with that organization again to find the way forward and make the government reintroduce the kombi or Mushikashikas on the road, but in a more organized manner than what we used to see. We would like to adopt the Blawayo model, which is so good. If the government can validate that, that will be a good move for Harare residents as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chibanda. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
You are welcome.
A small-time district administrator finds himself in hot water when his father asks a favor. Good Minister from Kunyarara makes its Harare premiere this month at Reps Theatre in an exciting production where Hollywood meets Zimbabwe. This ritual theatre piece set in a dystopian African state focuses on the lived realities of Africans healing from socio-political trauma and invites audiences to reconnect with theatre as a powerful storytelling medium to incite conversations about healing. Written by celebrated American playwright and actress June Carroll, The Good Minister from Kunyarara premieres in Harare with the Zimbabwean cast and production team and is directed by Tafazwa Bob Mutumbi and stars Tatiana D. Bumbe, Chipo M. Chikara, Charmaine R. Mujeri, Cedric Musongelwa, and Musa Sivanda. The worldwide premiere of the groundbreaking production will take place from 12 to 15 May 2021 and 19 to 22 May 2021 at Reps Theatre at 6:30 p.m. Tickets are $10. Tickets available through Reps Theatre online booking system Spotlight. +263 779 604 873. All COVID-19 guidelines and protocols will be observed.
So, Henry, public transport has become a real mess. Because we don't have enough government ZUPCO buses, we have private kombis who follow their own rules and Mushikashika drivers who stop and go as they please. Stepping outside your house to go anywhere has become a risk from injury to you or to your vehicle. How can this issue be fully addressed for the benefit of everyone?
Thanks, Tawanda. Well, I think three things, stand out from our conversation with Passenger Association of Zimbabwe. And I think the first is that, and this is something I think that all parties acknowledge, including the residents. The first is that we need a public transportation system. Harare needs a city-owned and operated, affordable, reliable, safe mass transit system. That's imperative. Those who recall, even before independence, you had United buses that worked. And then after independence, we talked about this in the last podcast, because of the influx of people coming in from the rural areas when the city gates were open, so to say, the ZUPCO, which took over from United, was no longer big enough. So then that's when they introduced emergency taxis. People remember the 404s, the 504s, which then culminated in the current commuter omnibuses and now the Mushikashikas that we have. But the bottom line is that what the city needs and what the nation needs in every metropolis actually is public buses and trains. This is standard all over the world. And then with that in mind, we can then think of complementing our public transportation system with our kombis and perhaps a variant of the Mushikashikas that's well organized. The second thing is the private players have to hold themselves to a greater standard, and they have to be organized. It's not good enough for them to wait to be policed by ZRP or the city of Harare or VID to provide public safety. So these organizations that are part of the commuters association, they should be the ones ensuring that their members carry people safely. Because after all, the same people who are in these organizations, their relatives are going on kombis and Mushikashika. So if it's not safe and it's a danger to public safety, it's endangering everybody. There's no discrimination around that. You can be driving in your car and be hit by one of those guys. You can be crossing the road in town, and even if you don't use public transportation, you can be hit and die. So there has to be an element of them holding themselves to greater accounts. Now, the last thing, I think, like we've mentioned with everything in our city, we have a governance problem. We have a problem where our institutions that are supposed to govern public transportation and even private players are faulty. So these Mushikashika guys and kombi drivers, they can easily bribe the officials. Some of the kombis and Mushikashika you see on the road, how are they operating when there's VID? How is it possible? It means that they're getting by paying bribes. So we have a massive governance issue that we need to take care of. So I think, first is it has to be part of the city plan to build a mass transit system, a public transportation system that works, that's affordable, that's inclusive, and that's safe. And then the second is we have to, as private players, if you own a kombi or Mushikashika, you have to be the one to hold your drivers to greater account. People can't be driving drunk, high on drugs, unsafe vehicles. These are things that are happening. We see them. We see them every day. And this is why we've culminated in now these guys getting banned. It's because there is an element of public danger. There's no public safety there. And then the third is we've got to deal with the governance issue. We've got to deal with the fact that the systems that govern public transportation are corrupt. They're inherently corrupt. We need to clean all of that up and put new systems in place that work.
Absolutely. I think the heart of the matter is that when you have private vehicles providing a public service where anyone with a vehicle is getting on the road and, operating their own business, each individual is just operating how they see fit, how they can earn money out of that situation. They're not thinking about the passengers. They're not thinking about following the rules of the road. And they're not thinking about how can I do this the safe way. They're thinking about profit. And I think that for safety to increase for passengers and other drivers, that needs to change.
Absolutely. I think that's the key thing, is that it comes down to an issue of public safety. We have to value our own lives, and the people that are operating these services have to realize that operating a combi is not about profit. The first reason why you buy a combi is to provide a service, transportation. It's the same way that a bakery exists to provide good bread before they exist to make money, and that's the same thing with combi. Combis must exist to provide public transportation that's safe and that's affordable. So when you have combis endangering people's lives, and we've now gotten to the point in the society where we have been desensitized by people dying in car accidents or in combi accidents. We've been desensitized because it's so common in our society. It's common that every so often a bus or a combi will kill 20 people. It's common. It's not uncommon, and we need to change that. That needs to become uncommon, and we need to have public transport systems that are safe. You've got children going to school on their own and coming back home. We need to be able to trust that our kids can go to school and come back home safely, and we can go about doing our work.
Absolutely. For the safety of everyone involved, we need to find a lasting solution to this issue.
Yes, I think it's entirely possible that Harare can have a world-class public transportation system that we see all around the world. It's entirely possible that we can build a really, really great system. There's nothing special about the systems that have been built all around the world. There's nothing special about subways. There's nothing special about buses that work. These are things that have been existing in other countries for decades. And there's no reason why in 2021 we can't have a city and a government that can put that in place. And the failure of that, again, is a failure of governance. And that's very important for our listeners to know, that whilst we've got all these other issues, and even the issue of Mushikashika and kombis and how they may be reckless and are a danger to public safety, the major issue we have to deal with in our city is governance. If we have a city administration and governance that actually prioritizes saying, look, public transportation is so important because it's the one thing everybody needs. And again, there's a quote I read that says, a rich country is not one where the poor people use public transportation, but it's where the rich use public transportation. So our public transportation system should be such a way that we don't need to use our cars. We should be able to go around the city peacefully and do our business using public transportation. That way we decongest the city, we have better roads, and we have more safety.
Absolutely. Thank you, Henry, for sharing that.
Pleasure.
We've come to the end of this episode of the Fix Harare podcast, brought to you by Harare News. Please look out for the next episode, which will be available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Anchor, as well as on Facebook and Twitter on our handle @Harare News. You can also send the message JOIN to 0786 580 574 to subscribe to receive the Fix Harare podcast via WhatsApp. Make sure to save that number to make sure you get our broadcasts. Until next week, goodbye from us here at the Fix Harare podcast.